Every idea has a tipping point, a magic moment when an idea, trend, or a social behavior that crosses a threshold and tips and spreads like a wildfire. Now, are there secrets to it? Can you actually model for a tipping point to actually happen in our career or in our startup or an idea stage? Well, we have Hari here today to join us and talk about the tipping points in his career as well as his personal life. Thank you so much for joining me today, Hari.
Thank you, Shalini, for having me on your wonderful show.
I'm sure, Hari, you've had several tipping points, right? I mean, you've been a VC, you've been an entrepreneur, as well as you worked in senior executive position, leadership positions in a lot of startups, and you've seen this wave multiple times, I'm sure. So, so tell me, have you had like major tipping points, or are there any ways in which a startup or an idea can actually work or model towards achieving that tipping point, especially in their early stages, right? Is there a secret mantra to it?
Yeah, so I'm not really sure there's a secret mantra or anything of that kind, Shalini. So maybe, you know what, I think literally when the floodgates open up to an idea, I think that's when a tipping point has been reached. And, Victor Hugo said this more than 100 years back that nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I think it's also been popularized as the product market fit in the startup world. So tipping point, product market fit, idea being the most powerful thing whose time has come. So I think these are all meaning the same thing really, which is that if you have a wonderful idea and the timing is not right, you've not hit the tipping point. And there's so many examples of this. So I'll give you some examples that I have personally encountered. One is a startup called Deliver. It was started much ahead of its time, before Swiggy, before Zomato, and they were doing pretty much what both of them are doing now. But it was way ahead of its time, and people somehow could not relate to online, ordering of food and home delivery of food. But then something happened in 3 years' time, and you had Swiggy and you had Zomato, and both of them have gone on to become decacons. Big Basket, for example, was a startup sometime in the late 90s. The same online shopping, internet, e-commerce, but it never took off for various reasons. People were not ready to shop online, share credit card details. The internet speeds were slow. But again, 2008 happened, Flipkart happened, and the world changed, at least India changed very significantly. And there was another opportunity for Big Basket. So an idea was there in 1990s, but then the tipping point happened in 2008, I would say, when the tipping point for e-commerce itself in India as an idea occurred. So I think it was the tipping point for e-com as an idea, and on that basis, several startups rode to fame and attained their own tipping points, I would say.
Sure. So I'm wondering, as you were saying, right? I'm wondering what are those key attributes that have to fall in place? I mean, there are two parts to what you just mentioned. One is for the
Yes,
ecosystem on the whole itself, right? There was a
right,
lot of, capital inflow into the country,
correct.
and say in 2012, 2014, there were not too many people like us, like investing itself, like
Yes,
angel money or personal money. But now you see everybody else, right? So I'm in my mind, I'm thinking
correct.
around 2014, 2015 was that small tipping point, so to say. But
Exactly.
I'm wondering, what is it? What are those key attributes in your opinion for the ecosystem itself to sort of see that tipping point? Is it because these startups became big, or is it the inflow of capital?
Yeah, so I think, what, the China story took off in a very big way. And to illustrate this, Yahoo made more money through their investment in Alibaba than they made by selling their core business. I think their investment in Alibaba got them $9 billion, whereas the core business, when they sold it to Verizon, got them 4.8 billion. So I think China was a massive story, and all these hedge funds and VC firms that either made it in China or missed the bus in China, all of them actually came to India because all of them felt that India was the next big story in terms of the macroeconomic opportunity. So you had VC funds, hedge funds coming in. Capital was scarce earlier. Suddenly, capital became abundant. And then once the startups began taking off, I would say hundreds, if not thousands, of young founders and entrepreneurs were inspired by Sachin and Binny Bansal's success story. So role models are very essential for people to follow and do similar things. So you had thousands of entrepreneurs trying new things. So until then, first generation entrepreneurs in India, actually had never focused on solving India's wicked problems. They solved the problems of the Western world, cost of labor, high cost of labor. So they built great IT services companies in India, but nobody attempted to solve India's problems. But Sachin and Binny Bansal, the hedge funds, all coming together, inspired these thousands of entrepreneurs. And when these thousands of entrepreneurs began setting up businesses, which again began getting VC funding, that inspired, another
Yeah.
set of thousands of Indians, the well-off Indians, who thought, angel investing is a good thing to do. It can give you both financial returns and it can be, interesting as well. So you had the angel networks, set up, and then you had mentors, people who've been part of this, ecosystem, had learned a lot of stuff, coming in and figuring out that, what, we can also contribute. So I think the whole thing matured, as you said, exactly between 2008 to 2014. Those were the years of maturing. But again, you know what? All the founders that created businesses in this period largely solved problems of the top 50 to 70 million consumers in India, 50 to 70 million top of the pyramid consumers. But now the tipping point has been reached, another tipping point, which is very interesting, that founders from tier 2, tier 3 towns in India who barely speak English, very confident of themselves, understand problems of the next 400 million Indians, are building amazing businesses for solving the problems of the next 400 million Indians who don't have the same paying capacity as the top 50 to 70 million Indians. So this is another tipping point. So whoever in India thought that you can build and sell products and services to these 400 million Indians profitably? People thought, they have their problems, they're going to live with their problems, God knows how will they ever get solved. But then, technology, entrepreneurial energy, venture capital, all have come together, so beautifully to be able to
Yeah.
address some of these problems which we thought can never be solved.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, with Aadhaar and
Yes,
UPI, as well as
correct.
Geo coming in a big way. I think that all of that also happened around the same
Absolutely.
time, which was also, I think,
Same
the
time.
tipping point, right?
Correct.
So which sort of really we saw like great growth around it. And also, I remember a
Correct.
time when they were like, say, Zoho or even Freshworks, right?
Yes.
People thought people can't build B2B companies out of India. We don't
Yes.
have
Correct.
the know-how to build product companies out of India. And I think after the two became massively successful, again, all of
Correct.
us started investing in
Absolutely.
B2B
In
companies
yeah, absolutely.
in India. So
Correct.
I think from a little bit from what I'm catching is, when we talk about tipping points, as an industry as a whole itself, right? It takes 5 to 7 years. It is not something that will just happen in 1 or 2 years,
Yes.
saying, "Nay, you give up on the market just because, nay, I don't think this is going to work." But actually, it takes that long, right? 5 to 7 years to see,
Correct.
for the
Absolutely.
tipping point to really happen. Now let's move slightly towards like a startup or a founder, right? Someone who's working with an idea, right? So in your experience as an investor and as an operator, right, how long do you think that it normally takes for someone to achieve that tipping point for their idea or startup in its early stages?
Yeah. So I think it
And how
really
much
depends
time do you
upon
think we should give for it?
how much time do you think? What was the question? Second
You
part?
should give for it, because
Oh, you
uh,
should give for it. Got it. Got it.
how
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. So I think, it depends on a lot of factors. So, for example, some founders are able to achieve the tipping points very early because of many, advantageous positions they are in. For example, I don't remember Anand Chandrasekharan, right? He started this, what's I don't remember the name, but then that got to $1 billion in less than 6 months. So what got this company to $1 billion in 6 months? I'm not commenting on whether valuation means everything or not. All I'm saying is that in some ways it reflects that a tipping point has been breached. And the advantage that Anand Chandrasekharan had was that he ran Mintra in his prior life. So I think there were a lot of belief that this guy can do it again. So I think tipping point is a combination of a bit of luck. You need to be there at the right time, right place, come with the right kind of reputation. Then probably it's much easier. But if you don't have all of these, then getting to your tipping point is a little more difficult, even though you may have a wonderful product. But then ultimately, I think if you really have a great idea that you're pursuing, deeply, deeply understand the customer, staying focused on solving a real problem, then I think it's a matter of time. Sooner or later, your product will hit tipping point, which is people will begin lining up outside your door to buy your product. People will, begin to talk about good things, sharing voluntarily without any inducements that this is an awesome product. And that's to me the definition of a tipping point or a product market fit, which is people just go out and spread the word. Your customer acquisition cost actually drops to zero because people are then voluntarily talking about good things, telling their friends, recommending to their friends. Your NPS scores, reach 80, 85. So to me, but I think, the time that it takes to build really the answer to the question, I think it depends upon, many factors. For example, Raghu, who ran Taxi for sure, his fintech company called Zolve, has really hit tipping point. And I think you're seeing several, Adam Newman has begun something new, right? I think WeWork ended up as a big fiasco, but his next startup, which he's trying to do, is already valued at $1 billion without even a clear definition of what the product is. So the valuation, if it reflects a tipping point, somewhere investors like Andreessen Horowitz, they do believe that this guy can do it again. And although WeWork was not such a financial success, it actually created a new definition of how offices should look like and how offices can be so wonderful places where people can have fun. So they believe that he can do the same thing in other, elements of real estate. So tipping point, I think, depends upon many, many factors. But ultimately, if you're very close to your consumer or customer pain points, and if you stay focused on that, I think it's just a matter of time by when you will hit it. It could be 6 months, it could be 6 years.
So, so I think it is, I think you will probably hit the tipping point once
Yeah,
you have customers, a deep understanding of your customers to begin with, and who are
yeah,
willing to buy or
correct,
have
correct.
repeat engagement, right? I think
Absolutely,
at
yeah.
least in the early stages of a startup, I guess that's all is the tipping point, that you have repeat customers.
Yes,
These guys are
absolutely.
coming
Repeat
back. And of course, the
customers.
definition,
Correct.
and that
Yeah,
definition changes, when you're at a series A, B, C. I think the definition of
yeah,
what
yeah.
is a tipping point, because you're looking for your next wildfire to happen.
That's correct. That's correct.
Especially when you have new product launches and you become slightly more
Yes,
horizontal to begin with, vertical, right?
correct.
So no, but so at each stage, I think that people have to sort of model for that tipping point to happen, because it's also a series of experiments, right? I mean, trial and error that happens to see
Absolutely.
what will actually
Correct,
get you to
correct,
hit the
correct.
tipping point. Probably nobody knows how that's going to happen. So, but yeah, I guess it's a series of experiments.
Yeah.
So tell me,
Experiments,
Hari,
absolutely.
you've had a very illustrious career. So you've had, I'm sure, several tipping points. So tell me, have you had any tipping point or life changing moment which sort of took you to another tangent?
Yes, I don't know about the illustrious part, Shalini, but I'll just tell you about my career and some tipping points possibly. So I think I'll tell you what, I've always followed my passions, which is whatever I really liked, I kept doing. I never really thought about, what is remunerating, what is really financially rewarding. I just really pursued my passion. For example, after my engineering, when I decided to do an MBA, it was not really to get out of engineering or get a foothold outside of engineering, but to really understand how engineering organizations work holistically. After which I took a job at Tata Steel. I was a very, very keen mechanical engineer. I don't know how time flew by. I just loved everything. I learned so much, for every aspect of mechanical engineering, the large equipment, gas turbines to, your coke ovens to steel plants, steel melting shops to everything. It was so exciting. But then at some point of time, I just felt that, Tata Steel is not really the place for me because I'm a bit of a rule breaker, a bit of an entrepreneur, wanted to get things done at a rapid pace. And I'm also interested in multiple things. So, engineering, I realized while it was a passion, I was also interested in economics, literature, writing, a lot of the other things. So, at some point, I just decided, let me figure out if I can find a more conducive place for my talents where I can break the rules, and breaking rules will be, respected and regarded rather than, being treated as an outcast for breaking rules. So I just found my place at Daksh, which was then a fast growing startup in the BPO space. It was an iconic BPO company acquired by IBM. So for me, that was a big tipping point. But and that happened a bit by accident. I don't know how I met the Daksh folks. That's a story for a different day. But living in Jamshedpur, where I didn't even have a proper telephone in those days at home, How I got in touch with this company in Delhi, I have no idea. So that was a big tipping point because it gave me a foothold into the startup ecosystem. And I've loved being in this ecosystem for the last 20 plus years, thoroughly enjoyed it. The second tipping point really happened about 7 years back in 2015. That was when I began thinking, what, can I share some insights with some young founders? Because I've been in this space for 13 years. 7 years back, it was 13 years. And then, what I thought, let me start writing because many of these founders are solving problems that have been solved before. So let me share my insights. And once I began writing on LinkedIn, people began relating to it because all my writings were actually unacademic. They were very, very realistic, very down to earth, real life examples. So they could relate to it. And I got a lot of love on LinkedIn. At some point of time, I was getting 1,000 followers a day. That was a big indication that somewhere I have breached a tipping point there. So I began writing extensively, and then I thought, why not share my ideas in the form of books. So my books began coming out one after the other. When I worked at Big Basket, I thought, we're building a very unique company. It's very different from the other startups. And so what's different? So the difference was that we never resorted to Jugaad at Big Basket. So saying no to Jugaad, the making of Big Basket happen. And then I, began associating with VC firms. I'm also very deeply interested in, finance, evaluating companies, and using first principles thinking. So I stayed true to my strengths and passions. My strength has always been curiosity, first principles thinking, those essential, and problem solving. These three things define me, and I'm able to apply these three things not just in the startup world, but also to understand, for example, diversity and inclusion, for understanding, feminism, for example, using first principles thinking to understand a diverse range of topics. In fact, I went on to write a book, co-author a book with Swati Jena on diversity beyond tokenism, why being politically correct is not helpful to anyone. So using first principles thinking, curiosity, and problem solving, I began doing multiple things. What I did was I just stayed true to my strengths. And from time to time, I believe that if you stay true to your strengths, opportunities will start showing up. And then you need to just figure out, what should I do? So I think opportunities just started showing up because I just stayed true to my strengths. That's really, my two tipping points. One was joining Dakshan, then writing about 7 years back and associating with the ecosystem. Prior to that, my association was very little. In fact, I just spent all my time looking inwards, working for that company and building that company, scaling that company, helping that company find successful exit. But then 7 years back, I just began looking out, and that's where I am.
Fantastic. I think I completely agree with most things that you said. I think for me the tipping point also came from I think also the quest for growth and learning. I think which is a part of
Ah,
curiosity
yeah.
which you did
Yes,
mention.
yes.
So I think
Correct.
because we all want to sort of experiment with new things, get out of our comfort zones,
Yes,
and having that growth mindset, right? And being
absolutely.
willing to fail, right? A
Yes,
lot of
absolutely. Willing
times,
to fail.
for example, the book that I wrote, it's not like, oh, I had
Yes.
a book deal which came, right? There is some time and effort
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you actually put in before the book deal happens and so on, right? I mean, it may not happen. But then I think
Correct.
those have been my tipping points, and most of them have been successful. Some have not been. But I think the idea is taking those
Correct.
chances on yourself and not being
Absolutely.
afraid to fail
Absolutely.
has always I've always seen a good curve
Yeah.
with that. So, one last question that I want to ask you is, when you're working with um, a lot of these founders, right? I mean, who can be in different stages, especially as an investor
Yeah.
when you're wearing the investor lens, right? How do you identify, does this person have the potential to go build what they want, in terms
Yeah.
of achieving their tipping point and so on, right? Has there been an example where you've experienced this firsthand, where you've seen someone go through this journey firsthand and they eventually came out successful?
Yes, so this is a very interesting question actually because the last 5, 6 years I have been speaking to multiple entrepreneurs very directly. I'm an advisor at Fundamentum, although on paper it's an advisor, but I'm very closely involved in everything they do, all decisions they take. So while speaking to entrepreneurs, one question that is always bothers every investor is that, will this founder really be able to build? Will this founder be able to scale? How do I evaluate this founders? What parameters should I look at? And so that thought has occupied my mind. It's not that I've been able to crack it. It's a continuous journey, and you keep getting probably better at it. So one thing I've looked for is this person able to demonstrate uncluttered thinking? So uncluttered thinking, is very, very essential, I think, when you build a business. Because if you don't have this uncluttered thinking, you can go all over the place. You will lose focus. You will not know what's important. You will not know what is not important. You will not be able to prioritize. You will not be able to even, identify and spot patterns before other people. So uncluttered thinking is what I look for. Now, the next question probably could be, how do you spot uncluttered thinking? But that's a topic for a different day. And the other thing I certainly would look for is, does this person have the ability to hire smart people, which is that, does this person deeply believe that hiring smart people smarter than me, for instance, is important for building a company? And are they hesitant or not hesitant? If they're not hesitant about hiring and inspiring smart people, then I think it's a very positive sign for me. Another positive sign for me is when a founder is easily able to say effortlessly that I don't know, I'm not aware of this, I'm not sure about this, I think it's a good question, I need to figure things out. So I think if they're able to easily demonstrate, saying that I don't know about something, that's a very strong signal for me, because a founder need not have all the answers. A founder should be curious, as you said, be willing to find out, use first principles thinking, and but not necessarily saying always I know everything. So openness to acknowledging ignorance and willingness to learn for me. So execution, which is about building a team, is hiring and inspiring smart people, uncluttered thinking, and just a simple self-awareness which reflects in various forms, like I need help, I'm not sure about this, I don't know about this, I'll figure this out.
That's very nicely put, Hari. I think uncluttered thinking, right? Sometimes you may not necessarily agree with their thinking, but I think having, if the founder
Yes.
is able to demonstrate strong conviction and reason
Yeah.
why it's the right direction itself,
Correct. Yes.
is good, right? Even though you may or may not agree
Yeah.
with it.
Correct.
I think this is great, Hari. I think my biggest takeaways from today's conversation is, when we talk about tipping points, it takes maybe 2 years, maybe for some it takes 5 years or 7 years, but it does take that long. And so we need to have the patience and
Yeah.
perseverance to sort of, channel and work towards achieving that. And the second thing is, curiosity, right? I think just follow your curiosity, and
Yeah.
having that mindset grow itself is, when you, especially because you were talking about tipping points actually happened when you explore uncharted territories, right? Areas that you haven't
Yes.
explored. So it's
Correct.
not like if you just one place
Correct.
you see it. So you
Yes.
have to keep trying new things. So yeah.
Yeah.
So these were great points, Hari. So do you have any thoughts to end this?
No, nothing. So finally, the last tipping point happened when we decided to start the Artha School for Entrepreneurship. So it was my foray into entrepreneurship, and we consciously chose, all of us, six of us. It's a time to give back to the ecosystem, and we've set this up as a Section 8 company, which is a not-for-profit organization. And we said, what, we're not just going to touch the lives of the VC-funded, high-profile entrepreneurs, but we touch the lives of, social entrepreneurs who are trying to create impact on scale, the micro, small, medium enterprises in India, which are creating almost 80% of the jobs outside of agriculture. So with this, we've gone out to help entrepreneurs scale their business. That's the problem that we're trying to solve, and with the vision of trying to build the world's leading institution to help founders and their businesses scale.
That's fantastic, Hari. Congratulations. And if somebody
Thank you.
wants to get more information about it, where can they find more information?
Yeah, they can visit our website, which is artha.org.in. At the website, there is an email that they can write to. Obviously, the easiest way is to reach out to me on LinkedIn, message me, or message any of us.
Okay, fantastic. I'm sure you're going to help a lot of social entrepreneurs find their tipping point through your new journey, and all the best
Yes.
for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie. Means a
Thank,
lot.
thank you, Hari.